And to further discuss this, I'm joined by Bolu Michael-Biyi, foreign policy analyst. Hello, Bolu. Thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thank you very much.
All right, now, Bolu, do you think that France is justified in expecting China to take a strong stance against Russia, given that the two countries have close relationship?
Yeah, I think it's justifiable looking at the stance of the two countries' international politics today. They are basically the two countries that is China and Russia, two countries that are standing against, the Western power, that is the EU and North America. And we've seen in different instances whereby as countries, when the United States, wants to show its power in a way, countries kind of defy them and look towards China. And when European countries or the EU as a bloc tries to do the same, countries begin to look at Russia. So, because of this geopolitical tie that China and Russia has, it's quite understandable that France would look towards China to be the mediator, so to speak, between them and Russia. And France is not just is the embodiment of the EU. EU will not by itself approach China, but France is more like a representative. So by extension, it's just trying to brought China in to support and have a closer tie with the European Union. If we look at the situation in Sahel, for instance, right now, the crisis is in Western Africa, there are some countries, Mali, Burkina Faso, and the rest. You see that when they ditch France and they look towards Russia. So because of this tie between them and this thing that they share in common, it's quite understandable that they are going through China to speak to her because they have the ear of Russia.
All right, so now talking about, this making sense. Now, given that France has a strong interest in maintaining a good relationship with China, how much pressure can it realistically put on Beijing to change its position?
The thing is, these two countries are very powerful countries, and say that when two elephants are fighting, it's the people that suffer. So if these two countries are loggerheads in any way, it's the citizens of their countries that will suffer, the economy in some way. China needs EU, and EU needs China as well. So they can't really exercise much pressure because that will contravene the principle of international law. In international law, we say perim parem non habet imperium, which means that a sovereign state cannot exercise jurisdiction or authority over another sovereign state. So they can to be against the principle of sovereignty and diplomacy internationally. They try as much to change or try to use force or any way to change the stance of another country on an issue.
All right, but then, Bolu, don't you think that France's call for China to take a stronger stance on the war in Ukraine might risk alienating China, and also damaging the relationship between the two countries?
No, I don't think so because this China they're good on their own. It's more or less like a continental bloc on its own, same as Russia. It's I don't think there's any probably there's no family probably on earth that doesn't have like made in China item. There's such an economic power. So they wouldn't want to risk in any way. I don't think EU or France will risk in any way to, want to sever ties with China. It's called decoupling. So what the stance that comes up mostly in international law now is de-risking. So they can't decouple, which is to demember, that is to isolate China in any way. That would be damaging not only to the economy of France, but the EU as a whole. Yeah.
Okay. Now, but then how possible is it that France's stance on the issue would set a precedent for other countries to follow? Could it have a wider impact on the international community's response to the war in Ukraine?
Well, there's a possibility there's actually France that is following precedents because there must have been issues. If we look back, in recent past, that whereby a similar situation is coming up, and China still having a neutral stance. But we still must find we have issues in Sahel, for instance, whereby countries are kind of detaching from themselves from France, but there's still quite a number of countries that are still very tied to France, and they're happy doing so. And there are countries that also want to have a strong tie with the EU. And there's no better way of, showing their commitment or interest in aligning with EU than having the similar position with EU countries or EU as a bloc. So yeah, there's still countries that France or EU holds strong influence, and before they take a stance, they look at the position of their allies and align with it. The word ally comes from align, and they have it has its effect. For example, when voting in the General Assembly, these aligned countries with EU or France can take similar position. That can change the outcome and the politics of the world in a significant way.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Bolu Michael-Biyi, for joining me and speaking on this.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.